So let me tell you what I was doing last night. I was sweating. It out. Let me tell you why. Because I wrote this piece about the Denver Nuggets clutch performance. The Nuggets are the number one clutch team in the league this year by a pretty big factor. And not only that, part of the story was that when they're at home, their performance in the clutch is like off the charts. So, normally in a game, in clutch time is last 5 minutes, score within 5 points. We talk about 100 possessions. Normally in a game, even if it's a really tightly game, you may only get 7, 8, 9 possessions where it's actually in clutch time. So to stretch it out to 100, that's a big ask. But, we are at the point in the season where we've had hundreds of clutch possessions for these teams. And so per 100 possessions, the Nuggets have been killing the opposition this year in the clutch. They have been outscoring in all games. They've been outscoring the opposition by 24 points per 100 possessions. I mean, that is big time domination, clutch time. So that's number one. Number one by almost 10 points. 76ers are number two. And we just saw the 76ers have one of the best clutch wins of the season on the road over the weekend, where they ended the Bucks 16-game win streak by just getting some great clutch play from Harden and Embiid. The Nuggets are even better. And when they're at home, it rises to 34 points per 100 possessions. If it's a close game in Denver, that it's you're in deep trouble. So last night, it's a close game in Denver, and the Raptors are winning. And this story is ready to go.
Oh.
Denver Nuggets, domination, crunch time, untouchable basically at home, and the Raptors are winning. And I got a text from Bontemps, and he goes, I'll bet you, because he knew this story was coming. He's like, I'll bet you're glued to the Nuggets radio network. which is a joke, because I can't watch Nuggets games when they're not on national TV, because I'm 700 miles from the Ball Arena, and that's not allowed. And
I thought you were going to take a shot at the announcers.
No, not at all. I would love to hear Scott Hastings. So would a lot of people in Denver who can't get altitude, which is another topic. But guys,
I just saw Stan Kroenke and talked to him, by the way, but that's another. We talked about it, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the Nuggets, the stats bore out, and the Nuggets finished the game on a 15-4
by 5.
run.
Well, hold on, guys. One of the things I love about this Nuggets team, Brian, is you never know who's going to come up big in the clutch. Of course, Nikola Jokic can do it, Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray. But last night, I think the most clutch performance for the Nuggets was actually Scott Foster, who assured you that this piece was going to get off without a hitch when he ejected Scotty Barnes when there was it was a 1-point game with 30 seconds left.
It was a 1-point game.
And honestly, I don't know what was said, but it wasn't very demonstrative, whatever it was. And I don't believe Scotty had a technical already. So he went straight for an ejection, which changed the whole tenor of the game. And allowed these clutch Denver Nuggets to win yet another.
Excuse me, sir. It did not change the tenor of the game. The Nuggets were going to win out. You know that, and I know that.
Yeah. Well, But anyway, shout out to the Nuggets' own Scott Foster last night.
According to Rob, according to Rob Perez, who Worldwide Wob, he runs these investigations. He studied the video and watched the press conferences, and Scotty Barnes apparently said, "Y'all are cheating, bro." And I don't know if he was speaking to the Nuggets or speaking to the officials, but Scott Foster, after the game, said that he questioned the integrity, or he called into question the integrity of the officiating crew, and so that's why he was ejected.
Wait, doesn't that happen like 36 times a game in an NBA? With the coach or a player?
I think we can agree that it was a questionable technical foul in that spot in a 1-point game, and it was beyond a questionable ejection. I think
is he the most sensitive ref in the league?
Well, here's the thing about Scott Foster. I think there was a game over the weekend where I think it was in Philly. He was in Milwaukee. He was in Milwaukee on Saturday night, and he called a 5-second call against the Bucks in the last minute of the game, I think. And that's the thing. Like, Scott has no problem making any call at any time. And in a lot of ways, that makes him a good official, because in some ways he's completely impervious to being influenced by the crowd. And
or the moment and the time, right?
Exactly. And one of the things that, people have said about him over the years is that the NBA, calls him in when they need a playoff series to be extended, because he, I do think that Scott Foster is not afraid to make any call at any time, and that's a double-sided sword. I think you want an official who's not gonna be intimidated by the home team going on a run or the home team crowd, but the same mentality leads you to call a 5-second call, in the last minute of a game, and to eject a player in a 1-point game, in the final minute.
Yeah.
So
one of my favorite sayings about the refs, Brian, is if you do your job perfectly, nobody knows you were even there. Scott Foster is the most famous ref in the NBA, folks.
Why? Because of the
Yes.
Tim Donaghy stuff, or because
I don't know. He always seems to be in the conversations like this. And I'm not saying he's good or bad. It's just, he's very visible in a profession where, the gold standard is to be invisible.
Yeah.
Let me just say that it was a 15-4 run, Kirk, and it wasn't just about that call. It was the dominance that was reported on and researched by me about the Nuggets holding firm. The technical foul was only a slight part of it, but so here's
he's
the thing.
rooting for his story. We root for our stories.
Yes.
We don't root for teams. We root for our stories.
Fair point. We've all been there.
That is a Hall of Fame analysis right there,
right.
Goldsberry.
That is very true.
So the Nuggets, I remember last year being awed by the greatness of the clutch play that the Suns had. As good as the Nuggets clutch play has been this year, the Suns were one of the greatest clutch teams in the history of the NBA last season. It was why they won 64 games. And then, of course, they were the absence of clutch in the postseason, especially in Game 7, where they were on their home court in the second round. And so I went back and looked at the recent performance of the teams that have been the best clutch teams in the regular season, and it hasn't carried over. Last year, the Suns. 2 years ago, none of the the Blazers were the top clutch team 2 years ago, but none of the top 4 teams made it out of the second round. I went back 3 or 4 years, and basically none of the teams that were in the clutch really. The last team that was a really good clutch team that performed well was the 2017-18 Houston Rockets, who might have won the title that year had Chris Paul not tweaked his hamstring. Or was that 16-7? No, 17-18. But this is really a point to talk about the Nuggets. Spears, the Nuggets now have a 7-game lead on the Grizzlies for the number 1 seed in the West. They are basically in a tie for the number 1 overall record in the league. We could very well see the path to the finals will run through Denver in the West. Okay. And we're maybe going to see the path to the title run through Denver. They are in position to get the number 1 overall seed the way things are lining up. We've talked for months about how tight the Western Conference is, but it's not tight at the top. The Nuggets are putting a big gap on the rest of this jumbled up field.
So are they going to win it? They're going to win.
That's my question to you. They're killing in the clutch. They got a guy who's going to win the 3rd consecutive MVP in all likelihood. You look at their offseason acquisitions. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown are 2 of the most effective players in the league this year by plus minus and in the clutch. So how come nobody talks about this team? How come nobody respects this team? And I'm not talking about just the media. Spears, when I talk to people in the league, when I talk to players, they don't have a lot of respect for this team. Exactly.
I'm gonna tell you why. I covered this team for 8 years. I was around Denver. And this is where I wish I would have asked Kirk this in advance. What NBA team since the ABA-NBA merger has done more without winning a championship or done more without going to the finals?
Maybe the Suns.
Yeah.
Oh, they've been.
The Suns have been to the finals twice.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about that hasn't been to the finals.
Yeah.
And I just to me, it's like I feel like Denver fans are ready to get let down, right? Every year they seem like they have this really good team and something goes wrong. Can you, if let's say they play the Clippers in the first round, who are you picking?
I'm picking Denver because I just gave all the data.
Okay. But
who are you picking, Kirk? I mean,
well, I love that point, and I'm not going to spoil my pick, but I saw the same thing. I think there's a few first-round matchups for this team, or second-round matchups. Look, there's 3 Finals MVPs sitting around in the lower half of the Western bracket. One's named Stephen Curry, one's named Kevin Durant. Who knows where they end up? And then there's Kawhi Leonard, and these are 3 dudes that we've seen win the freaking playoffs. And I think Spears' larger point is it's just topsy-turvy right now. Some of the guys we've come to trust in the postseason are at the bottom of that bracket. Yeah. And some of the guys that are, this Jokic, number 1, and the Kings are up there, and the Grizzlies, there's some instability and question marks around those top teams. But I don't know who I would pick, in part because the one stat with this team, Brian, and you talked about a little in your piece, in your column, which I recommend, is this defense is the most important unit of any unit in the postseason. The last 3 postseasons, they've ranked 12th out of 16, 12th out of 16, and 16th out of 16 postseason teams. A lot of us need to see it work in the spring before we're going to trust it, particularly, Brian, when we're talking about Kawhi and Stephen and Kevin being on the bottom half of that bracket right now.
Yeah, I have to see it, and this, I'm not here for the slander of Joker. He's amazing. If the dude, it's a regular season award. I've heard guys say, "Oh, he don't do anything in the playoffs." It's a regular season award, right? But if the Nuggets don't make it to the finals, it's a disappointing season. You can't be that far ahead and lose in the first round or second round. To me, it's at minimum conference finals. We have to put some pressure on them, man. This can't be a failure anymore.
You know what it reminds me of, Spears, is the Jazz run that just ended, right? This regular season, small market Western Conference team would just show up and dominate the regular season and just flame out and flame out and flame out. I think this is such a massive year for this Denver core, that coaching staff, because they have very lofty expectations and an unusually sort of weird Western Conference bracket staring back at them.
But we're oddly no pressure. Brian, how often do they talk about the Nuggets on NBA Today?
Never.
Right.
Never.
First place. No one talks about them. And it's like maybe, hey, Kirk, this your backyard, it's like the Spurs, right?
100%.
But the Spurs were the Spurs. The Spurs won. I look forward to seeing the Nuggets get over that hump that's plagued them since the days of Issel and English and Dikembe and Melo. Chauncey, they just haven't been able to get over that hump. I don't count the bubble. Clippers choked. And the Clippers gave them a free pass to the Western Conference Finals. So someone said, well, they made the West Final.
Jamal Murray made big-time shots in the bubble.
Clippers choked, Brian.
I agree.
They were up 3-1. They wanted to go home. That's not saying that Murray wasn't amazing.
Right.
The Clippers should have won that series, period. it's the most. It's funny. I talked to Joe Kim Noah the other day, and he's like, he didn't really want to talk about it. Like, I'd never seen a collapse in front of my eyes like that ever before. It was the most stunning thing. Like, I'd never seen guys on that level wanting to go home. So I don't count that for Denver. I'm sorry. My apologies, Denver. And Denver knows I love them. Like, I had no problem spending time in Denver. Let's go to Vail on an off day. Like, let's go eat some bison. Like, I'm all in on that. I just got to see them do it. Like, I think if you ask most NBA writers or even most players, do you take Denver or the field, right? Or, you know what I mean? Or the bottom half of the Western Conference, they probably take the bottom half of the Western Conference. Like, I got to see it to believe it. But if they don't make it, like, we got to start calling them out, man, and start giving them some. They deserve more attention, but I think they're fine without it because it's not putting pressure on them.
Well, when you watch them play, when I'm allowed to watch them play by the league pass rules, they have a very maneuverable team. Because when you look at Aaron Gordon, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Bruce Brown, they are very versatile defensively. So they can handle a lot of different matchups. They can go into full switch. Murray and Jokic are not strong defensively, but Jokic is not a sieve. He is able to do some things. And here's the other thing. When you have Jokic, you have a guy who's going to generate a good shot for somebody, like huge number of percent of the time. And you look at the numbers these guys shoot in the clutch, they're all awesome. The only guy who's really, Caldwell Pope and Murray's clutch numbers are a little low, but they just generate good shots. So when you're at the end of close games, you have these versatile defenders who can all do a bunch of different things, guard a bunch of different positions. And you have a guy who's going to generate shots. And by the way, what do you need in the NBA right now? What's the most important thing you got to have other than versatile defenders? Yeah. You got to have good 3-point shooting. Guess who's the number one 3-point shooting team in the NBA? Denver Nuggets, number one percentage in the NBA.
But here's what I think you're I'm not telling you any of this is wrong. They are 7 games and what is the most a team has been ahead at the end of the regular season in their conference and not made it to the finals? They have no excuse. The Denver Nuggets have to make it to the finals. You can't be this dominant and lose. They have to make it to the finals.
Plus,
they have to. They better. They have to.
Well, and their record at home is
Brian, I'm sitting next to you. We're sitting next to each other. I'm with you.
Yeah, I got you. I'm not talking.
And I think you agree with me, but they have to make it to the finals.
Yeah.
You can't be this dominant. The Warriors, when they were 73-9, right? They ended up losing, but they made it to the finals. They have. I don't want to hear. They got to make it.
Let me put it back. So Brian, you have to have 3-point shooting. Outline that. You said Nikola Jokic, not a sieve. Great. But here's something when we list the other contenders in the West or in the NBA that these other contenders all tend to have. I don't talk about Time Lord in Boston, Brooke and Giannis in Milwaukee, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley in Cleveland, Embiid in Philly, Triple J in Memphis, Draymond Green in Golden State. What do they have? They're definitely not a sieve. Those are some incredible interior defenders. And maybe the question here is that defense good enough, not just to thrive in the regular season, but to compete with those other incredible defenses that are gearing up for a postseason run? And my question around Jokic is, we all know what he can do on offense. I'm fine if he's the MVP, but in the postseason, can he actually be the defender that he needs to be to win 4 rounds of the playoffs against these other incredible basketball teams? I think that's a fair question, especially in the context of these other interior defenders and paint protectors that are going to also want to win the NBA championship this year.
Yeah, we're in for a really great Western playoffs, I think.
I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait.
I mean, I was just in Dallas over the weekend and I'm watching the Mavericks play, and I'm like, this could be a play-in team. In fact, after they lost that game, they were a play-in team. You know,
the
and
play-in
so
part is going to be incredible too.
man,
Like,
I mean,
come on, Nuggets. Come on, Nuggets. Let's go.
I know. Well, that's the thing. In general, just to be clear, in general, there's a limited amount of respect for the Nuggets, and there's a very limited amount of respect for the Kings. So those teams that are back there are looking up there and looking at those, you know, and like the way the Grizzlies are going, I don't know what's going to happen with Ja. I don't know when Ja's going to come back. I don't know how many more games that
I wouldn't be surprised if he's done for the season.
All right, well, let me talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Sacramento claws their way to 2. Okay.
Agree.
So you're talking about both teams that get in through the play-in, which we just talked about, are going to have star power. Yeah. Both those teams potentially emerging, not afraid of the teams they're going to play.
I-80 series, baby. Warriors, Kings. Let's go. Oh yeah.
Well, you've been the Kings champion for months now. Who do you like in that one?
Kings, man.
That would be right up your alley.
You know, it's interesting. I was in Sacramento yesterday, and it's just like this. It's probably like a different feeling, but similar to Denver, where it's not about like getting to the finals. It's just about like making the playoffs. And I'm like, what's y'all magic number? Like, there's this nervousness. Like, it looks good. Like, if they were anybody else, you're like, yeah, they're in the playoffs. But until the Kings like actually punch that ticket, there's this like nervousness at the Golden One Center about like every single game, like winning every single game and not messing up and not blowing it. Like, I feel like they feel like they're Charlie Brown and trying not to miss that football, man. You know, like I want to be in that room, like, and then now like the expectations are higher. Like, it's not planned. Like I was asking somebody at one of the this guy covers the team for the B, and he's like, they basically have to go for 40, I guess, percentage wise, and to not make the play, to stay out of the plan. Like, they'd have to be really.
There's 6 games. There's 6 games in the loss column clear of the play in with less than 20 to go.
Yeah,
I like their chances of making the top 6.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.